Singapore's Prime Minister Loong today issued the writ of election for the presidential election, declaring the 17th of this month as nomination day. The Prime Minister's office also issued a statement informing Singaporeans that they would go to the polls on Saturday, 27th of August, to pick their next president, if there is more than one candidate eligible for the contest. And joining us now from the newsroom is S. Ramesh, who tells us more about the coming presidential elections. So Ramesh, tell us more about the potential candidates in the upcoming presidential election.
Well, 5 Singaporeans have expressed their interest to contest the presidential polls so far. And the returning officer for the elections, Mr. Yam Ami, has also issued a set of symbols which the candidates can use so that voters identify themselves with these symbols, which include a violin, a piano, and a pair of binoculars. Now, the nomination centre for the presidential election is at the People's Association at King George's Avenue. But before the hopefuls can make their way to the nomination centre, they need with them several important documents, paramount of which is the Certificate of Eligibility. Now, candidates have another 3 more days till Saturday to submit their forms for the certificate. All but Mr. Andrew Kuan have sent in their forms, and he plans to do so on Friday. Oteli.
Now, Ramesh, we hear that potential candidates have issued their statements following the announcement of Writ.
Well, former Deputy Prime Minister Tony Tan says, given the present economic uncertainties, it is highly likely that the next president will be involved in decisions about the economic future of Singapore. Now, Dr. Tan said this may require the president to invoke his formal powers on whether to draw down past reserves. Dr. Tan said that's why he resigned from jobs that he loved to step forward and offer his candidacy. He added he looks forward to a vigorous exchange of views during the campaign, which should be carried out with decorum and in a manner befitting the office at stake. Now, former Ayer Rajah MP Tan Bock says his campaign will go into full swing once he obtains a Certificate of Eligibility. Dr. Tan says at least a few hundred volunteers have signed up, and they will be divided into teams to campaign in various parts of Singapore. Dr. Tan has fought 6 general elections in his decade-long political career and says the experience will come in handy.
So when we started planning, we know exactly the type of people we want, okay? The kind of action we should take, the areas that we should comb, and so it's just an extension of my little constituency in Ayer Rajah.
Former NTUC Income Chief Kin Lian says he has sufficient resources to carry out an active campaign and that his volunteers are ready to swing into action. To reach out to internet-savvy voters, Mr. Tan says he will stream live question-and-answer sessions during the 9-day campaign period. He is also prepared to go on walkabouts in various parts of Singapore. Mr. Tan asked for this election to be a dignified one and called on various entities to give candidates fair coverage.
If one candidate were to get a lot of companies endorsing him, then the general public may be unduly influenced, and I think this is not good for the election.
Another presidential hopeful who says his team is ready for action is former opposition member Tan Jee Say. He says he will differentiate himself from the other potential candidates by emphasizing his independence from the ruling People's Action Party. Earlier today, Mr. Tan submitted his forms for a Certificate of Eligibility to contest the upcoming presidential election. His group of supporters included Singapore Democratic Party member Michelle Lee and National Solidarity Party members Jeanette Chong Aruldas and Nicole Seah. Mr. Tan, a former civil servant, said he wants to be an active and visible president. Mr. Tan said he's confident that he will fulfill the eligibility criteria.
I have been running companies too, and I've been in government departments too, so I know what it is like, the importance of having a stable president.
Tan Jee Say was a former chief executive officer with the title of regional managing director of an asset management company for 4 years. Now, during that time, the company did not have a paid-up capital of $100 million, but Mr. Tan said it had managed total assets in excess of $100 million. Now, the Constitution requires candidates to have managed companies with a minimum paid-up capital of $100 million. Today, Mr. Tan said he's applying under Article 19(2)(g)(4), which does not make any mention of paid-up capital. As for Mr. Andrew Kuan, he says he'll submit his certificate of eligibility application on Friday morning. He says he believes the atmosphere and decorum during the election period will be pleasantly dignified. Now, the former Jurong Town Council Chief Financial Officer had failed to qualify in 2005 in his bid to run for the presidency. At that time, the Presidential Elections Committee had ruled that the seniority and responsibility of Mr. Kuan's position as JTC's CFO did not match the eligibility criteria set out in the Constitution.
All right, thanks very much for breaking it all down for us. Well, the writ has been issued and potential candidates who have not done so have the next 3 working days to submit their applications for the Certificate of Eligibility. Let us have a look at the timeline for this election.
Like the general election, nomination papers for the presidential election must be signed by the candidate, the proposer, the seconder, and at least 4 assenters. Candidates will be issued their certificates of eligibility by the Presidential Elections Committee at least a day before nomination day. On nomination day, candidates must present their nomination papers and certificates to the returning officer between 11 a.m. and 12 noon. Now, if there is a contest, the returning officer will issue a notice of contested election. Campaigning begins after nomination. Candidates can conduct house-to-house visits, distribute pamphlets and put up banners. Under guidelines issued recently, TV will be a major medium of the campaign. Candidates will be given airtime to make statements and take part in a joint TV interview. Now, each candidate will be allowed to hold 1 rally at a designated location. New media will also be a tool candidates will be leveraging on. Campaign expenses will be limited to 30 cents per registered voter or $600,000, whichever is greater. Unlike the general election, there will be a cooling off day before polling day when no campaigning is allowed. Polling takes place between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. Singapore's president holds office for 6 years.